New entries in the anime horror genre are few and far between, but every once in a while, we're treated as something that's either scarily good or frighteningly bad. Still, this particular mix of genres does feel a little dormant these days, especially when compared to a period like the mid-2000s. Most everyone's familiar with horror shows like Paranoia Agent, Higurashi, or Elfenlied. The usual suspects that populated many a top 10 most disturbing anime of all time list back in the day. While not as explicit or horrifying as those entries, 2007's Mononoke was an incredibly gripping supernatural horror that kind of fell between the cracks for a lot of people, most likely due to its reputation as an unapproachable avant-garde series, buried under layers of complicated folklore. While some of that might be true, it's not the whole story, but yet, this little-known series remained unsung for over a decade, until one day, seemingly out of nowhere, plans to revive the series with the trilogy of films surfaced. So with the recent release of the first film, I thought now would be as good a time as any to take another look at Mononoke. You know, I'll admit that this series didn't quite grab me when I first saw it a long time ago, but in hindsight, the first arc just isn't a very strong opening. The first episode of Mononoke feels like you're dropping into an ongoing series because, well, you are. It wasn't until I saw its original pilot contained within another anime entirely sometime afterwards that the series started to click for me. But back then, finding the correct watch order wasn't so clear. Sure, you can watch these self-contained stories in any order you'd like, but there is an intended watch order for the series. The original pilot is entitled Bakeneko, but Bakeneko isn't episode 1 of Mononoke. There's another arc starting with episode 10, also entitled Bakeneko. I know, it can get confusing, but let's start at the beginning. Mononoke is technically a spin-off series. The concept was originally created as part of a 2006 anthology series, Ayakashi Samurai Horror Tales. Ayakashi consists of 3 separate stories created by different teams, 2 of which are retellings of tales from Japanese folklore. Those 2 stories are pretty decent in their own right, but they pale in comparison to the series' third story, Bakeneko or Goblin Cat. Split into 3 episodes, Bakeneko was essentially a proof of concept from Mononoke. It follows a mysterious figure known simply as a Medicine Peddler, or as the original language and many fans call him, Kusuriuri. It begins like most episodes of the series that would follow. Kusuriuri arrives in a certain place in time, just before the appearance of a vengeful spirit, also known as a Mononoke. The spin-off series does have a similar opening, but this arc works so much better as an introduction to the world and main concepts of Mononoke. We're also given a better build-up to the supernatural event in general. After the death of a noblewoman, Kusuriuri is arrested by samurai bodyguards, who soon begin rifling through his ancient, bottomless medicine box. As the samurai investigate him, we get a breakdown of each item he carries and their purpose. These are items that appear in nearly every episode of Mononoke, and we'll find the best explanation for them in this pilot. We also get a companion character, Kaio, who serves as an introduction to the strange world of spirits. Through her eyes, reason to the many concepts that become mainstays of the series, as Kusuriuri hunts a powerful demon. That's another thing about this arc. The stakes feel very real here. Although I enjoy the slower pace of the spin-off series, in Bakeneko, Kusuriuri is constantly on the back foot, as he's outmaneuvered by one of the best antagonists of the series. Trapped with the noble family as the Goblin Cat inches closer, he uses everything in his arsenal to hold the creature back. The iconography of this show and the Medicine Peddler's tools just look awesome. From his katana to the scales to the nearly unending amount of seals that jet out of his hands. I know this gets thrown around a lot, but this show oozes style. Eventually, Kusuriuri's desperate attempts to hold back the demon are rendered futile. When the Bakeneko is finally unleashed, we cross into a nightmare realm, where past and present play out in tandem. Time is irrelevant, life and death coexist, and only the truth matters. The truth, however, is often unpleasant, and the circumstances that lead to the formation of these evil spirits are gut-wrenching to watch. In turn, these confrontations with the monsters and their deeply affecting past end up feeling like the most human parts of the show. The final episode of Bakeneko is seriously just excellent. I try my best not to give away too much for now, because I implore anyone looking to give the series a chance to at least watch these 3 episodes. Ayakashi also has a pretty banging opening theme, so you should at least watch that too. I can't play it here, so I'm just showing off some of the visuals, but you seriously need to search for it when you finish this video. Bakeneko was an interesting mix of action and horror, but the spin-off series opts for a slower pace, centering around uncovering the 3 secrets of each exorcism. This is where some of the heavy folklore of the show comes into play. It's a little dense, but bear with me for a moment. In order to unsheath the sword of exorcism, Kusuriuri must find the shape, truth, and reason behind the evil spirit's existence. For this, he employs a style of exorcism derived from Mikyo Buddhism's 3 secrets. A Mononoke is a spirit born out of the desire for revenge, meaning it typically has ties to its target. Once Kusuriuri encounters the spirit and familiarizes himself with its shape, he then turns to the living, who are being hunted, for the full story. Through cross-examination, he extracts the truth from them, leaving only the reason or regret of the Mononoke. Once the 3 secrets are discovered, the sword can unsheath. Kusuriuri then turns into a powerful form, his enlightened inner self, and is finally able to slay the evil spirit. The 3 secrets were part of the original pilot as well, but in the spin-off series, Mononoke really hones in on the investigation aspect, to the point where it starts to feel like a great detective story. The Medicine Peddler is also more competent, experienced in exorcism and acting as a calm observer in most cases, a stark contrast to the character seen in Akashi. His unyielding desire to find the truth and reason of any situation he's thrown into puts him closer to an archetypal detective like Hercule Poirot. Not to mention, it's very satisfying hearing the clicks of the exorcism sword when Kusuriuri gets on the right track. The wide cast of characters we encounter are always trapped in a small setting as they're being hunted. You feel trapped alongside these characters, ramping up the tension as a Mononoke grows in power. It feels like a play, which is intentional, but having that whodunit aspect attached to finding the Mononoke's target and reason for existence evokes a feeling of an Agatha Christie novel. The Umibozu arc in particular has a very death in the Nile feel to it. The second Bakeneko arc goes even further into murder mystery territory, complete with political espionage and corrupt journalism. I'd say it's a fair bit like the Ace Attorney games as well, with both combining detective work and mysticism to some degree. In 3 separate arcs, we also see Kaio and Kusuriuri team up, which feels a little like Maya and Phoenix. More importantly though, Mononoke captures the same, deeper human sentimentality that can be found in these other works. I don't know what it is about this show, but the end of each story arc, the end of each case, always feels emotionally fulfilling. It's a feeling you get just like when you finish a great film. As I touched on earlier, the show's heavy use of folklore can be intimidating for many people. While the cultural elements are ingrained in the series, it's still incredibly enjoyable without having to know every single aspect of Japanese folklore. And the show will sometimes even let you in on the context when it's crucial to the story. There is a document of cultural notes that's been floating around for some time now, which is really good at clarifying what happened in each episode, as the cultural references can get dense. They also really help to understand some of the more ambiguous endings for certain episodes. Sadly, in the copy that I have, episode 5's notes are way too blurry to understand. Episodes 11 and 12 are unfortunately missing as well. If anyone can find the full version of this massive 65-page document, please post a link in the comments. I'll definitely make sure to pin it, since it feels like these notes are on the verge of being lost media at this point. Within these self-contained stories are a multitude of different tones. One moment we're tagging along for a whodunit mystery, the next we're witnessing a love story in 5 acts. Accompanying this is iconography that feels impactful and mechanics that just make sense. They fall into place very neatly, molding into each of the wildly different settings that these characters inhabit. Like the titular evil that Kusuriuri hunts, Mononoke is a show that hides its form, one that you slowly uncover alongside the characters. There are arcs like Nue that can feel a bit like a Monster of the Week story, with how conventional they seem. There are elements of battle shonen, especially in the final fight, and this arc ramps with the horror visuals. Still, the resolution subverts our expectations. Even when resorting to genre conventions, Mononoke plays it smart. While it's one of the more straightforward narratives of the series, Nue also contains some of Mononoke's more stylistic choices, especially with its use of color. Nue begins in a world devoid of color, a stark contrast from other episodes. The colors return either as the suitor's emotions heighten or when their memories are triggered by sense. In other words, when the Nue's illusion slips and the truth is revealed. Color is also a major part of the violence in Mononoke. Murders, as depicted in the series, are oftentimes seen in explosions of color and expressive paintings. Mononoke is not a very dark and gory show, though the gore and scary visuals are definitely tuned up when they need to be. Mononoke, especially in its spin-off, relies on atmosphere to sell its horror aesthetic, and it pays off in spades. The isolation of the characters from the real world once Mononoke makes his appearance gives everything a very foreboding feeling. You really do feel trapped with these characters who are at the mercy of demons until the mystery is solved. While there's a lot that Mononoke does right, I did want to highlight a particular gripe that I had with its anthology-style framework. We have some characters like Kaio who appear in multiple episodes as reincarnations, but for the most part, the arcs of every character besides Kusuriuri begins and ends in their segments. Umibozu in particular contains the best cast of characters within it. I want to see more of Kaio, Sasaki the Cursed Samurai, and Yanagi the Ascetic Monk, who plays off Kusuriuri very well as a lesser exorcist. I know this is an inherent problem with anthology stories, but these are all great characters, and it's disappointing that once the ship docks, we won't see what happens as they continue their journey. Although we're introduced to many characters each episode, the mainstay is always Kusuriuri. His story takes place primarily in Japan's Edo period. However, the final arc of the series is strangely set way further into the future than the other episodes. Set near the turn of the century, the second Bakeneko arc has cities, suits, and trains replacing older tech and attire. This all creates a larger mystery for Kusuriuri. Is he some sort of time traveler or wandering spirit? His outward appearance isn't entirely human either, sporting these large canine teeth, pointed ears, and mysterious markings. Still, we're never really given a backstory for Kusuriuri. There are so many things in Mononoke that don't ever get explained, but that's the beauty of the series in some way. It's rife with enough depth to spark fan theories and discussions, but it's also content with being ambiguous. Mononoke isn't just about a hero slaying demons, although that is what's at the forefront. It's really about these indelibly human stories of regret and loss. Time and time again, Kusuriuri encounters tragic scenarios, performs his duties, and then heads up to the next one. That is what makes him such a strong force. Despite facing demons that are often very justified in the grudges they hold, Kusuriuri always has to make the difficult decision to exorcise the demon. But in doing so, The vengeful spirits can finally be put to rest. I think there easily could have been more stories created out of a series with such a solid framework, but we are getting the movie soon, so I guess it all works out in the end. Or after 15 years. Mononoke was directed by Kenji Nakamura, who also did episodes of The Big O and Suritama, which is another great anime you should watch, by the way. One of the staff writers is also the prolific Chiaki J. Konica, who wrote Digimon Tamers, Hellsing, and of course, Serial Experiments Lain. Konica wrote both the Umibozu and Nue arcs, with the Nue arc in my opinion having the most Konica influence in it. There's not much to say beyond that, but I thought it was really cool to see such an iconic figure in anime attached to this solid project. The overall look and art style of Mononoke is heavily inspired by ukiyo-e paintings of the Edo period. The show itself generally takes inspiration from kabuki and in some arcs, no theater, both prominent art forms at the time. There's a world of depth beyond the history of these elements, but it goes far beyond the scope of this video. Suffice it to say, there are many elements in this series that showcase its influences. As for the more contemporary techniques, Mononoke employs a mix of still images and 3D backgrounds throughout. From the making of featurettes, it seems like they initially sketched out backgrounds to make 3D composites out of. Then, the 2D animation and still images are drawn on top of CG renders. Some objects like Kasuryuri's medicine box use texture wrapping for a more detailed look. Some of the background characters, especially the large crowds of the second Bakeneko arc, retain their basic CG model. This mix of CG and animation was pretty ahead of its time, I think. And although we've had some infamously bad examples of CG and anime since, Mononoke employs this technique very skillfully. So remember earlier in the video when I told you Mononoke was an unsung series? Well, that's only partly true. It wasn't a huge hit in the West, something that's further evidenced by the lack of an official dub until 2021. Just a quick aside about that dub, by the way. The voice actor for the Medicine Peddler was way better in Akashi. The reason for this is that the official dub for Mononoke was produced decades later and by a different studio. Akashi's dub was created by Ocean, a massive company responsible for countless classic dubs. The role of Kasuryuri was played by Andrew Francis, the voice of Chiaki from The Girl Who Left Her Time. Once again, that's my 1 degree of separation from that video. Somehow that keeps happening. The dub for Mononoke was created by Oni Productions, which is a company with a less established track record. I know a lot of people choose to ignore dubs entirely, but as someone who enjoys them, the difference is night and day. Having only the pilot dubbed by such a great cast was a real missed opportunity, especially considering that Mononoke was released only 1 year after Akashi, which means that the opportunity to have a dub was there, but I guess it just never worked out. Also, I'm about to open a can of worms, though it's probably no shock to those of you who watched the channel before, but man, dubs just used to be so much better back in the day. Anyway, Mononoke's relative obscurity gave it a reputation for some time as an underrated series in America, but it did well enough in Japan to spawn a few manga series and not just 1, but 2 separate stage plays. The manga's artwork is honestly really well done, but despite having so many volumes, all of these stories are essentially a retelling of events. There are, however, some tiny extras hidden at the end of each volume that are pretty entertaining. The manga isn't one continuous series though. It retells the various arcs from the anime as separate installments. These volumes were never officially published in the US, so the only way to read them in English is through good old scanlations. Save for the Bakeneko arc and the first film's Karakasa arc that's currently being published though, the rest of the series is yet to be even scanlated. The only way to read arcs like Bakeneko 2 and Operabo are to buy the physically untranslated volumes, which of course are seriously overpriced on eBay. Since they're just retellings, I might not be missing out on much, but the artwork is beautiful, and I do enjoy manga personally, so yeah. I would have loved to read these if they were more accessible. Now, I'm obviously coming at this from a Western standpoint, but the Mononoke stage play seems to have its roots in kabuki theater. The costuming and effects are pretty great, and the story clearly lends itself well to a stage play. Well, except for the cat prop they had to use. There are no subtitles on this copy I managed to find, so I can't really enjoy it as intended. Also, this copy is probably unlicensed, so that's enough of that. It may seem weird that these stories are essentially told in 3 different mediums over and over again, but in doing so, they mimic the tales that inspired them. The tale of Genji can be told in many ways, but it's still compelling every time, and the narratives of these stories really seem to mesh well with whatever format they're presented in. That being said, I'm excited that the upcoming movies are actually full of new material that will breathe life into the franchise. Which brings us to the upcoming film trilogy. In 2022, during a live stream celebrating Mononoke's 15th anniversary, the series creators launched a Kickstarter campaign with plans to create a film project. You can actually still view the livestream VOD, and as you can see by the reactions, the news was pretty crazy at the time. Despite the manga adaptations trickling out throughout the 2010s, I think many people were probably expecting a remake and not a fully fledged film project. By the way, while Mononoke had a great visual style, the visuals for the film were somehow an insane step up from the series. The initial release date for movie 1, Karakasa, was slated for 2023, but after some delays, it was announced that a trilogy of movies were now in the works. The first Mononoke film was already out, and the second will be released in Japan in spring of 2025. Have I seen the new film? Well, yes, and I have some thoughts, but that's a tale for another time. As always, thank you so much for watching this video until the end. We're approaching 10k subs, which is really wild to think about. I honestly hope you've enjoyed the work I made along the way, and if you haven't already, please subscribe since it really does help out the channel. When we get to 10k subs, I'm planning to do a Q&A, so you can actually start asking me any questions you'd like in the comments of this video. I also wanted to let you know that I've launched a Patreon. I know, here comes another would-be content creator asking for a Patreon pledge. I know, but hear me out for just a sec. I made my most successful videos before I was even monetized, so I never really pay much attention to avoiding content claims. And since then, I've kept it kinda lax in terms of monetization. These videos take a fair bit out of me to make, and I still want to be able to make them this way, without having to worry about ads too much. So yeah, this has been a long time coming, but I have a solid amount of videos in the works now for you guys that I'd love to get out as soon as possible with your help. For now, there's only one tier starting at $1, so you can pay what you want and receive everything I post. And I do plan on posting some behind the scenes content for future videos. If you want to give more, I'll be incredibly grateful, but any amount really helps. Alright, with all that out the way, I hope everyone has a great 2025. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.